Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Andrew. Today we are continuing with the discussion on religion. Before I start, I just want to say, no matter what you believe when it comes to religion, I respect that you can have those beliefs, and good for you. If you believe in God, good for you. If you don't believe in God, good for you. No matter what religion you believe, good for you. If you don't have one, just as good. I have no problems with you on what you believe or not believe. The only time I start to have issue is when you tell me what I have to believe because you say so. That does not fly with me. Just like you are entitled to believe whatever you want, so am I. And it's only when people start to not respect that I then have a problem with them. So in general, most religious people I encounter and talk to about religion, we have great discussions and there's no problem. It's only those few and far between where they think they should be able to dictate what I should have to believe because, again, they say so. So this video is going to be all about my experience in religion and my education. So I was Presbyterian by upbringing. I was baptized, and what was really nice was that my parents did a fantastic job of teaching about the religion in an unbiased way. So they taught, they taught about the Bible, they taught what the stories were about, but they taught what religion expected of you, but they also taught the flaws of religion at the same time. For instance, it was pointed out to us that, like the Bible was written at a time, some parts of it over 2,000 years ago, and life was very different back then. And so some of the parts are going to sound weird. Now we know them to be science, but they didn't understand them, and so they attributed them to God, for instance. I can remember the first time thinking, something's not quite right here. I had to have been old enough to kind of understand that a guy and a girl are needed to make a baby. So it's right in the first story, Genesis, God creates Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve have 2 children. They're both guys. They're both male. Well, I guess that's the end of the human race right there. I remember asking my parents about that, actually, and they pointed out that the Bible should probably be viewed less as a historical document and more of just a series of moral stories trying to show you how to live a good life. And I actually think that's true. I think that's exactly what the Bible is and how it should be viewed. Incidentally, it turns out it wasn't the end of humanity because Cain and Abel, when they grew up, went to the nearest village to collect wives. But I thought there were only 4 people on Earth. What? Boom. Don't worry, I'm going to be doing videos about that type of thing in the Bible. So it's not accurate. We know that it takes at least 6 to 10 individuals in order to create a species and have it genetically diverse enough that it won't just have issues. There's no way one family can populate an entire world. One male, one female populate an entire world. But there's no way they would have known that at the time. So I get that. Now, fast forwarding a long time now, we're jumping to grade 11. I took a world religion class in grade 11, and I think one of the reasons that I started realizing just how great and beautiful religion could be was because of my teacher in that class. She was amazing. She made things entertaining and fun and enjoyable that most teachers would have been the driest, most boring topics ever. She also was the first teacher I had to point out that she had biases, like everyone else does. Everyone has biases, and although she was going to try to not let them interfere in her teaching, they probably would come in at some point, and so we should be aware of that. And she even explained. So, for instance, she was Catholic. She grew up Catholic, to the point where they had to. Her family had to say the Lord's Prayer in Latin, or I think that's what the story was, before they ate their food every night. So that was the first time I'd ever had a teacher that said, look, there's bias. Everyone has it. It's going to affect everything in the world. It just does, because you can't, it's very hard to separate bias, even though you try. And she is one of the best I've seen that have done it. The bias still exists. And just on knowledge base. Like, obviously her knowledge base of Catholicism is much more than her knowledge base of native religions, of the indigenous religions. So that was the first real experience I had on multiple religions, and I found them all interesting. I noticed when I was in that class there were a lot of common themes within these religions, and actually the one that the big one was because the project in that class was an essay and a presentation. You basically had to write an essay and then do a presentation on the same topic. I chose the flood myths. I can't exactly remember my introduction, but it was something like there are over 40 religions of the world. It turns out there's way more, by the way, that have a giant flood myth. And I pointed out that there's a giant flood myth in at least one religion for every continent in the world except Antarctica. Obviously, there's a reason for that. There's no one on it, no one there, or not enough people there to have a full religion. But every continent has a flood. Every one of the continents has a giant flood myth, and again, they're all very similar. Generally speaking, a person or a family has to prove their worth or moral value to a god or a god's helper, and then that saves them from the flood. And a lot of them too, also they take up multiple animals of each species to try and save them. Some even take seeds for plants and stuff like that, and then they're asked to continue to look after the animals, make sure they repopulate, and also repopulate the human species. Again, that's an issue if they're the only ones surviving. You don't want one family to repopulate the entire world. There's just issues that way. But it's less about repopulating and more about be a good person, and then you will be safe from the giant flood. But anyway, I was in grade 11, and I thought it was way too coincidental for all of these religions to have this and a giant flood not have happened. And that was basically my essay and my presentation. I said this is there's way too much here. Like, they're all very similar stories. They're all basically about a giant flood that comes in out of nowhere. And I said, so I think this flood happened. And she made a fun comment on the bottom of my essay. I can remember this. It was something along the lines of, I don't know if that's true or not, but keep investigating, keep finding these common patterns. And actually, since then, it was actually proved that there was a giant flood that happened on Earth at some point in our past. I forget the exact amount, but I know it's multiple hundreds of meters that the water rose after the flood. Probably right after the last ice age, this happened. So those stories all probably generate back from that, from ancestors that passed them along orally at first, and then eventually got written down and added into religion. So I went after that point to university. I tried to get into a religions class at university. It's the university that I went to. It's one of the hardest classes to get into because everyone wants to get into that class. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to get in there, but that didn't stop me. And actually, I just want to point out, I flourished in university like I didn't in high school, and part of the reason why was because I asked a lot of why questions. Why is this way? Why is it like this? Why do we believe that? Why are we doing it like this? You know, questions like that. In high school, teachers think you're challenging their authority when you ask questions like that, generally speaking. In university, they're like, oh, thank God, please continue, please find the answers. That's at least when I went. It may be completely different now. Like, I am 35 years old. I actually left university after 2 years. I didn't finish my degree at all. But so it's been a while. So I'm sure the landscape has changed significantly, but at least when I was there, that's how it was. So I realized I also had a joy of learning. So I enjoyed religions I read about, and I'm like, what's stopping me from learning about these on my own? The answer was nothing. It sure helped when the internet grew significantly. You know, it was there all through university. It was there through high school. It was a little different back then, but it's a lot faster now, which helps. And there's more information now than there was back then as well, so that's helpful. I can remember when I started doing this that it was easier to get information from books. Now all of that information is online, so it makes it so much easier to learn. I mean, you have to take everything with a grain of salt, but then again, why shouldn't you do that in books as well? Because that's, again, a person writing that, and maybe they have a reason for writing that, maybe they're biased in some way. So I say take a grain of salt with everything you learn, but I just learned. I learned and I learned and I learned, and any religion I could find information on, I learned it. I have probably forgotten more than I have kept at this point, but I keep learning about it. It's one thing I'm very passionate about and I enjoy learning. I'd say my favorites personally are the Norse religion, so like Odin and Thor, and the other Norse gods. I love the ancient Greek religion. I took classical history at university. That was going to be my minor, and I did take classical religions, so that would be like Greek, that focused primarily on the Greek, the Roman, and the Egyptian religions. I also really enjoy Hinduism and the big three, so Judaism, Christianity, Islam, which I include together because I believe they're three parts of the same story. But every religion that I've read about is beautiful in its own way. So the difference, I think, when it comes to me versus other people who are more within that religion, I think I'm able to see religion in a way that most people don't. So imagine that you're in a maze. If you're inside that maze, and the walls are so tall that you can't see over them, you can see everything you can see in that maze, and it's going to be very, very detailed, but you can only see a small part of that maze at any given time. Imagine another person like myself. I'm on top of a hill and I'm looking at that maze. I'm going to be able to see the full picture, just maybe in less detail. Now that being said, I'm not saying that I'm better being on the hill. I'm just saying it's a different way of seeing, right? So like, if you being in the maze or being a part of that religion, you're going to see the detail in the moment, but you may not see the full picture of that religion, where that religion is going, etc. That is partially because they change it every now and again. That's partially just because it's hard to step outside and look from outside if you're already in. Whereas me, I will see the whole thing, the full big picture, just I miss a little bit of the detail when you're actually inside looking at those walls of the maze, quote unquote. So I have a couple of conclusions when it comes to what I learned. Again, as I said this before, number one, every religion is beautiful in its own way. Number two, most, if not all, were great stories and parables on how to live a good life. I wouldn't take what happened in them literally. I don't think that Jesus, for instance, walked on water. That being said, that story in general, there's a good moral behind it. So I wouldn't take any religious text as necessarily a historical document, but I would take it as these are great ways in order to live your life. And by the way, most of those stories hold up to scrutiny today. Obviously, there are some that they got wrong. I'm going to be talking about this in a later video, but for instance, in the Bible, slavery is okay. Clearly, we've moved past that as a society for the most part, and so not everything fits modern time. But you got to remember again that these were written a long time ago, and that brings me to number three, which they were all written by people trying to understand natural elements in the world and basically answer a question that's been around probably since humans became human. And that question is, what happens to us after death? And the problem with trying to answer that question really is that nobody knows the answer. People can pretend. I'm probably going to say this very often in this series, but there are two people who know what happens to us after death: fools and frauds. Because clearly there's no way we can actually know. And so either you're fooling yourself into thinking you know, or you're trying to commit fraud against others into convincing them that you know. So that's where I stand on it for the most part. I will go more into it and my beliefs and stuff like that when it comes to very specific things I'm talking about in this religion series, so stay tuned for that. But that's going to be it for this video. Let me know, do you like learning about other religions as well? Do you just know about your own? Do you not know anything about religion? Let me know in the comment section. I hope you have a good day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.